Let's embark on the Ark Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current affairs that matter. We talk issues with professional views, all keeping you in queue. We wanted a higher vibe for these days and times, to free the voices and minds, reporting the sign of the times, so all can build. Let's shine. Yeah.
What up, wherever you are in the universe? We are speaking again with Sebastian Prats, who is an Ark Republic reporter, contributor, who works between San Juan, Puerto Rico, and New York. Currently, he is in San Juan. And we have been talking about him, about the politics of the matter that have been going on. How are you doing, Sebastian?
I'm doing great. It's always a pleasure to be here and to be able to speak to a great audience.
Thank you, thank you. And please, if you hear, y'all, if y'all hear a truck pass or the windows are open. I live in the city. It has been hot. Climate change is real. So, forgive me in advance. I don't have like all these fancy setups, but it is effective. So thank you so much, Sebastian. We actually are going to talk about a very serious issue, an issue that actually hits home to me, having worked on the Hill. And actually before I worked on the Hill, when I was finishing up at Florida A&M, I actually worked during what they call session, is when they do the laws, in 1998 in Florida. And I worked in a committee office on the side of the House. So I have been in and out of politics. Actually, I've been in and out of politics since I was in high school, when I did some volunteer work for a supervisor. But this is me being a woman, and just moving through these different political spheres. We want to talk about the culture of sexual harassment and sexual assault that runs rampant in a lot of high political, high influential circles. And namely, we're going to talk about the recent scandal, or I don't know if I want to say it a scandal, but the unveiling and resignation of two now elected officials on the Hill, Eric Swalwell, and I think his name is Tony
Tony
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez.
Yes.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Sebastian.
Yeah. So starting off with Eric Swalwell, he's been part of the ever-changing race for California governor. He was for a good while considered the front runner after Katie Porter's campaign suffered I would call it a scandal where she walked out on an interview and stories were coming out about how she treats her staff. And it was really unbecoming of a leader. And her campaign has suffered as a result of that. Then Tom Steyer's campaign was doing better, but not quite enough to be comfortably first place, which left Swalwell in the lead. Now, what happened recently is that these allegations came out of Eric Swalwell of taking advantage of young staffers in their early 20s, sometimes younger than myself, even, while they were drunk, taking advantage of the power dynamic there, the power imbalance. And I would say, first of all, the difference between that and Katie Porter's scandal is Katie Porter's was unbecoming. Eric Swalwell's was unacceptable for a leader. So he denies the allegations. At the same time, in those denials, he says he said he apologizes to his wife for his past behavior. What that past behavior entails, he didn't specify. And more importantly, he dropped out of the California governor race and the next day resigned from his congressional position. That seat is right now unoccupied, and the election to bring in his replacement will come around in August this year. But the thing is, he wasn't the only one. There was Tony Gonzalez, as we mentioned as well, whose former staffer unfortunately killed herself as a result of the abuse and of what she suffered under Tony Gonzalez. And what it seems like is the only reason Tony Gonzalez was resigned now, because those allegations have been out for weeks at this point. The reason he resigned appears to have been some unofficial behind the scenes deal to have Swalwell and Gonzalez resign at the same time. That way it doesn't affect the House majority, which is a sorry state of affairs, is the truth. especially because there's still another member with similar allegations on him, Corey Mills, another Republican from Texas, much like Tony Gonzalez, who's still serving, who's still a member of Congress. And it speaks culture in Congress, especially among members when it comes to dealing with sexual harassment, because the reality of staff there, which a lot of people don't realize, is a lot of them are extremely young. A lot of them aren't even 30. Many of them are recent college grads, if not people who have been working in the Hill from the moment they graduated. So the power dynamics that define their income, their livelihood, everything that they need to survive in this world runs through these members. So it's an immense imbalance of power there in the workplace. Some members are very great to their staff. I've seen that myself firsthand. Other members I've heard and seen in the news are not so great, much like Katie Porter, but no, some take it to another level of an abuse of their staff, take advantage of their staff. And this is not only something that happens within the Hill, but is normalized within these circles. And I would say we saw that in the New York City mayoral race, where Andrew Cuomo was being endorsed left and right by moderate members, when the reality of the situation is Tish James, New York's Attorney General, launched an investigation and found him guilty of sexually harassing 11 women. And this was in 2021. This is known. This is not a matter of, oh, well, it's only allegations. This is a matter of fact under the eyes of the law and allegations which made him resign. And you can say, oh, well, Zohran Mamdani was radical and things like that. The truth is that primary had candidates who fit the belief systems of more moderate individuals who certainly represented the ideas of people who were endorsing Andrew Cuomo. And the reality, I would say, is that they cared more about electability and the safe pick rather than the women he is known to have harassed and the dozens more who have accused him, and the fact that they were endorsing someone like that to run the biggest city in the US, the greatest city in the world, I would say, is in itself a disgrace, especially within the party to say, I will not support my party's candidate. I will support the man who did these horrible things to women.
There's some, excuse me, there's some things I want to add there to give perspective. One, when we talk about in New York City, I said, didn't Adams had some type of scandal? I know it came out that a former paramour of his worked with him, but also in the research, the internet revealed that an ex NYPD aide by the name of Lorna Beach Mathura actually sued Adams for a 1993 sexual for allegations of him soliciting a sexual act in exchange for political favor. And so he actually, up until March, was in a lawsuit against these allegations. Let's also bring up the fact that you have Christy Nome, right? That
Mhm.
who was just removed. There were accusations of her being in an illicit affair, right? And then her husband, Big
That
Booby
was a whole
Brian,
thing.
comes out, Mr. Prosthetic. If you gonna get some fake boobs, get some room. Why the balloons? Why Brian? But anyway, and they were googly eyed. One was right. Okay, anyway. So then you have I'm laughing, but this is very serious. Lori Chavez Derimer, who's the labor secretary, who's been accused of having an extramarital affair right now while she's in office. There are, I mean, the Trump administration is filled with all these. Why do we know all this stuff? But it's it. I wanted to bring women in to also show that it is pervasive throughout electoral politics. It is not just a male thing, even though in these spaces, particularly white males have more in terms of the power dynamic. they present as having an upper hand. I'm so glad you raised the point that most of the staffers that are working on the Hill, with the exception of the upper level, the ones, the chief of staffs and things like that,
Mhm.
are all fresh out of college, might be still in college, and there's a reason for that. One, this type of work requires. It's like you're doing sometimes 20-hour days. Sometimes you're doing days nonstop. So you're going to need somebody who can exert, excuse me, that amount of energy. Hence why you have more younger folks doing a lot of the hustling, and y'all cheap labor. And depending on what type of budget you have, it depends on who you hire, and there are quite a few people who might have political aspirations themselves, and this is a great opportunity to learn in real time, hands on, about the political process. With that being said, the people who have skin in the game, the elected officials, those higher up people on the staff who know, initiate or haze the younger folk who are coming in into a culture of sexual harassment, sexual assault, drugs, alcohol, and silence, right? Because it's not even unspoken. It's spoken in a lot of ways that if you expose anybody or if you attempt to go against the grain, then you will be removed, right? And you will not be endorsed. As a matter of fact, if they can't get you, so there's like different tiers. One, they just won't mention you. They'll act like you never existed. That's one level. And another level is, they'll put so much dirt on your name, you couldn't even step foot on the Hill. So there are just kind of like different ways, and a lot of this is done as threats, whether spoken or unspoken. But I'm glad you brought that out. But in our pre, right, in our pre-record, the question that I put forth is that it being so pervasive, I don't know if the question is how do you change it, or what entry point should we go in this age where serious and gross sexual acts of violence are being denied and are being sequestered by the upper echelons of the world, of some people in this global world order.
Yeah, I think the first and easiest step is if someone is credibly accused or found of having engaged in sexual harassment, anything of the sort, without exception, get them out of politics. That means people like Trump, that means people like Eric Swalwell. Does not matter which party they belong to, which office they hold. These are not people who can be trusted with power as they have already held it over other people for their own illicit desires. That's the first step. And it's really unfortunate that that has to be said because it means that that hasn't been properly enacted already. Now, I think after that, there needs to be serious reprimands that are guaranteed for people who engage in these acts, not just counting on their good faith in resigning or stepping away, anything like that, because we saw it with Andrew Cuomo. They might step away, but they can just as easily come crawling back. And there was a time where it was considered almost prophecy that Andrew Cuomo was going to be the mayor of New York City. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's completely it's beyond description how unreasonable that is, both for the people of New York City and for all the women that that he that he inflicted trauma on, that he in many ways left scarred. It's there needs to be more decisive action, and in terms of what that actually looks like, not just saying to take some nebulous idea of action. I definitely think that within Congress there needs to be a codified bipartisan commitment where if these allegations come up, there could be some kind of function that is anonymous, perhaps, much like how Senate leaders are elected, where there can be a private vote to oust a member. That way, these votes are not held against people. Members don't have to be publicized, that where they can exercise good conscience and say, this person acted in a way which is completely unacceptable for a member of Congress, for any politician in any level of politics, and they can be ousted. Because right now the issue is what we saw. It became a partisan issue to oust Tony Gonzalez until a Democrat was accused, and suddenly, okay, now we can trade one member each side. That's unacceptable. It shouldn't come down to party label. It should come down to basic principle and basic respect. And for staff, I think that I know that there are systems that exist to prevent this, to be able to report this. When I did my internship, we were informed of these resources that they exist, that that's a responsibility. And we also went through, even for internships, we went through our own training to be respectful of other people's boundaries. And while I'm not familiar, I at no point did I see nor hear of any staff suffering this kind of behavior from other staff or from other members. We've seen it now on the news that this is something that at the very least, happens from members to staff. And the issue there is, well, it's a lot more fickle, is the truth. But I still think that there needs to be comprehensive legislative action taken, not just stand on statements or mere principle, unfortunately, anymore. There needs to be a way where people can look at what's being changed and say, and be able to trust that this is not going to happen again.
I wonder what that looks like when you have, and I'm specifically talking about the U.S. and maybe the former colonies or the former colonial authority countries. So we're talking about France, UK, all those, right? What does that look like when you have governments that have rose to power with people who were in power? And let's just narrow it down. I mean, we can even talk about this in South America, right? Or rose to power, and part of their tenure, sexual exploitation, violence, rape was like, the order of the day. So when you have that type of foundation, what does that look like in how do you, right? And the reason why I say that is that this becomes the foundation that often fuses power with like the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? The snorting cocaine, like the Wolf on Wall Street, I am working. So I have quite a few stories about working in the House in Florida, in the state House, right? And as well working on the Hill. But what I learned working in Florida, that during session, they had what they called session wives. You ever heard of that term? Session wives were sex workers, or they were women in extramarital affairs with the elected officials who would move up to Tallahassee, because that's where the capital of Florida is, and serve as their partner or better half for the session. The session could go on, I think the session went on for like a month or two, something like that in Florida. But and I did not find out, Sebastian, until I was mistaken as a session wife. Yes,
Oh my God.
I was mistaken as a session wife because there at the time we're talking about, this is 1998. There weren't not a lot of black people working as staffers. Definitely not where I was. So a lot of people thought that I had gotten my job based on quid pro quo, and I was, there as somebody's paramour. And because of that, and that was a rumor that had been passed around, because of that, this is how, I experienced sexual harassment by an elected official. And then I found out that this is what the thought of who I was. So, and for the record, I was so stressed out. There was nobody I could talk to. I mean, who could I talk to? But I was so stressed out. I remember the day that I quit, because I quit abruptly because I was asked to stay on because I was very efficient. I wanted to be in politics. I wanted to be a lawyer, all that nice stuff. And I had hives throughout my whole body. I was so super stressed because I was walking around saying hi to everybody. And a lot of people thought that, I was a lady of the night. But this is on the House level. The federal level, you have probably more sophisticated you know,
Guardrails?
did you say brothels?
Guardrails. I'm like,
Brothels and guardrails. How about that? So you have just a more sophisticated system, right, of what this looks like. And I'm pretty sure that what was happening down in Florida is definitely going to happen in where you have people who are actually paid, right, as staffers or whatever it is, or some capacity, but actually are there to serve the sexual interest of the person who hired them or whatever it is. So the reason why I put that very personal, this is the first time I've actually talked about this publicly, and I'm 50 plus, and this happened when I was 22. So I've talked about it in private circles, but I wanted to make note that this is like almost 30 years ago. Things have gotten more sophisticated, especially with technology. So what does this look like? When you have these histories, these new technologies, and this culture that is so, to me, kind of like goes hand in hand with the electoral officials. It's also, as you know, what you see also in CEOs of major companies, in the entertainment industry. You have the Weinstein case, blah 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 blah. So you understand, it's like a huge issue, and sex is a primal act, right? I mean, what I'm saying, most people engage in it at one point in time in their lives, or they've had feelings. So how do we address it? I mean, I know you said to codify it, but and that needs to be codified. Um, Maybe the question, I don't know, like what are some steps that we need to take to move more towards that you talk about?
I mean, I think, and this is kind of reiterating my first point, but I think it's certainly worth reiterating. I think it's taking a stronger stance within these groups in the first place. I mean, there there should have been much stronger pushback against endorsing anyone with credible sexual harassment allegations such as Andrew Cuomo. And there should be there it shouldn't be a process to do these things. And I think the biggest scandal of all here was with the Epstein files. I mean, that was a months long fight, and the report on how that initially got started was that it was a junior comm staffer in Ro Khanna's office who suggested it in a standard roundtable for issues to bring to legislation. And she was originally met with almost ire from her fellow staffers, I would say, judging from what I remember of that piece, saying that it was an internet thing, that it was, that it was a fad, that wasn't, pushing back against the idea of releasing the Epstein files. And we know how that ended up. We know that it needed a scant few Republican votes, defectors who said, no, this is a hill worth dying on. And for, of all people, Marjorie Taylor Greene, it was her hill to die on, politically speaking. I think she's made it very clear she's retiring from politics, at least for the foreseeable future. And that ran through the
She's not
Epstein files.
retiring. Go ahead. I'm listening. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and she resigned early from her term, which is remarkable considering the MAGA firebrand she was no more than a year before she resigned. And similarly, Nancy Mace, another MAGA firebrand, who I believe herself has gone through sexual harassment and written about it before. She was one of the people in support of releasing the Epstein files, of the few Republicans who did it. And it was only when it finally came to a vote that conveniently every single Republican member of the House, with the exception, I think, one, voted in favor of releasing the files. And Republican leadership is still delaying the release of this. We're recording this in April. That was supposed to happen in November. We're still waiting on files to be released, which is the extent of how much they're covering for Epstein, because a big part of it, absolutely, is Donald Trump's involvement, Donald Trump's how close he was with Epstein, by Epstein's own words. But it is also every single other individual implicated in the entire Epstein scandal. That means in the US, that means outside of it. And it speaks to the state that things are in with respect to these extremely serious issues that should not be partisan at all.
Several things with former Representative Swalwell and Gonzalez resigning, and how you said that it was some kind of political move, like it was like in a backdoor agreement, right? Because in the age of Epstein, these are the two people who become the villains of the sexual scandal, and they have to leave. But I think your resolution also, to me, magnifies my point as well as to how ensconced these type of behaviors are in culture. Maybe perhaps this doesn't start as legislation, and the reason why I say that is one of the things that the Trump administration is making very clearly is that he's a lawless president.
Yeah.
And as many people are following that type of thought and that type of behavior as much as possible, the only time that they get smacked back, and then you talk about people in high levels, is when they outshine Trump. They can get whatever it is, but once you outshine Trump, you are kicked out of the club. So so that's why I'm saying, like, one, I don't know if it's something that is codified in terms of legislation, and then that's one with the lawlessness that we have, and two, not only you have a disregard of laws, but you have an erasure and a termination and a voting down of laws that have been protective covenants, right, for those who are vulnerable, or just policies in place to make the system move as best as it possibly can. So I believe that this is going to take something that's going to come out of the people. Like, this is going to have to
Yeah.
be a push that is coming from the people, because and the reason why I say Marjorie Taylor Greene is not finished with politics, if she wouldn't be talking about it as much. I know is being positioned as, well, she no longer holds office. Now she can be more vociferous about issues than she was as an elected official. Being on the Hill, you see people, that power, it's very hard to give up for a lot of people, especially when they have not had power. They haven't occupied those levels of power. That's another point in terms of why it's going to have to come from the people, because if you have a culture that's raveled with or intertwined with this sex culture, this sexual violence and assault and harassment, and it's like, hey, I won't tell if you won't tell. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of current members who are going to go for it and actually carry it out. That's another thing, right? So, but let me say this: this is not still push the line. That's my thing. Still maintain your integrity. Still maintain how you see things. And I think that's what we need to really just encourage about the generations coming up behind us is that we messed up, or we even see things maybe a little differently. But not in this case. We don't see things differently. But I'm just saying, like, I want you to remain resolute in that, because we need more Sebastians in the world. Definitely on the Hill.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, the last thought is on you, Sebastian.
I think despite all the pain that has been involved, especially in this current Congress, with moving forward and moving towards a better direction when it comes to what should be basic standards across not just politics, but any professional sphere. I want to say that we're headed in a positive direction. The backlash against not releasing the Epstein files was fierce, and it crossed party lines, it crossed ideological lines, because a lot of people rightfully identified as a matter of principle, as a matter of protecting victims. And I think the backlash within Congress to the response to Swalwell and Tony Gonzalez has been has boded well for the future. Lauren Boebert, AOC, very diametrically opposed politicians, have been very clear and very similar in their messaging in response to this. I mean, Lauren Boebert said, "Go to church, find Jesus." I mean, it's yeah, they need to find Jesus. I have to say I do agree with her on that one. And with how AOC in particular is rising the ranks in democratic leadership, I hope that someone like her and people she surrounds herself with can work towards a brighter future and a safer future for everyone.
And if anything, this moment shows very clearly just how perverted and deviant a lot of folk are who are making decisions, and there's who are in the position to make decisions for the best interest of the people. That is extremely concerning. So whatever we do about it, it is definitely a collective accountability. Thank you so much, Sebastian. I look forward to talking with you soon.
Likewise, thank you so much.
All right.